Hey, Susan Palmer here, and I'd like to share with you what's happening in my studio this week. This has been a very wild week for me, in part thanks to Josh Klein and Lyle Brewer, who each posted video reviews of my book, The Guitar Lesson Companion. I've had a lot of sales this week, which has been great. It really helps me keep my studio up and running, and I don't know if anybody who knows me, they know that I'm extremely passionate about jazz and guitar education in general. And so getting these books into teachers and students' hands makes me feel really, really great. So I actually have to go later today and buy some more paper. I do print all the books myself. I bind them myself. It's pretty much a one-woman show for the whole thing. And I do that so that I can keep costs down. And honestly, it's just kind of fun. You know, everything I do in my life seems to revolve around some aspect of teaching guitar, playing guitar, guitar education, videos, that kind of thing. So it's just kind of part of my lifestyle. So thank you so much to Josh Klein and Lyle Brewer. If you're not already subscribing to them on YouTube and Instagram, I strongly encourage you to go over there and do that. This week, I wanted to talk about guitar fingering because that's something that came up for me after I've been playing for a while. I would wonder, how would I play a note that falls outside of a scale pattern? Because for a long time, all the notes that I was playing, they were just in those scale patterns. So there wasn't really a big question. But then I started to play other music, or just when I was improvising, I wanted to know, how do you deal with chromatic notes or notes that fall outside of a scale pattern? And I asked a lot of guitar players, and I found that the classical guitarists, they seem to have the most thoughtful answers. So I really tried to pick their brains as much as possible. And in the course of my playing and my teaching, I kind of found a couple general guidelines. I hesitate to call them rules because, at the end of the day, it really depends on what works best for you. And, there's no guitar god who has all the answers to everything. So it's really up to the individual to kind of take in all the information that they're seeing and, formulate that to fit the mechanics of their own body and the music that they're playing. So these are some general guides, but as with just about everything, it really comes down to your own personal choice. What I suggest that students do is just be very thoughtful about it. Have a reason for why you're doing something, because that's going to lock into your subconscious a little bit easier, and you won't have to think about it so much. Like I don't think about fingering at all on my instrument. It's very intuitive at this point, but that's only because I spent a lot of time back in the day really trying to map out what makes the most sense in different circumstances. So one of the first places that this shows up in terms of scales is with the C major scale, and I'm playing that in 5th position, so it's like a G string root there. And with this one, we have there's two places you could play that note B. And here's my kind of general rule. If the line is ascending, you'll use your first finger to play both B and C. If the line is descending, I'll grab that note B with my pinky. And if a note pattern is going from C to B to C, I'll just use my first finger for that. One place where it deviates from that is if I've got the note G followed by the note B, because I don't want to use the same finger to play a note on an adjacent string that's a fret below or above. If it's on the same fret, I can do a finger roll. But if it's on another fret on another string, it just doesn't make the most sense. So even if a line is ascending, in that case, I would use my pinky to grab that. So that's one of the first places that shows up. And I talk about that a little bit in my book. I have some exercises that deal with that. And the way that shows up in other places quite often is if you have a chromatic line. Like if I'm playing, D to D sharp to E to F. Here I just played all chromatic. I would reach back to play that D sharp or E flat. And and to go into whatever music is happening after that. Now, if I'm playing E and then I want to play an E flat next, I'll use my pinky to play that note E flat or D sharp on the A string there. And so that shows up quite a bit. And, music that you're reading and improvising, I think that's a good rule to follow, or those are good general guides to follow. But there's another thing that you can do as well that I don't want to discourage people from doing, which is you could actually shift out of position. And, I like to have everything all in one, neat and tidy area there. But there's nothing wrong with shifting out of position, especially if it makes the most sense. So you may want to, figure out in your music ahead of time where those shifts are best to occur, and maybe make some notes in your sheet music so that you have that mapped out beforehand. Again, I want you to, I encourage people to, really be thoughtful about this stuff for a while, and then just, you'll have the intuition to be able to do this in the way that seems to work best for you. One other place where this kind of shows up is just between chords. Like, I did a lot of thought when I was figuring out, how I want to number my fingers, for the different chords that are in the book. And, I'm playing this G, E minor because that was one of the first things that came up for me. And when you're playing a G chord, this is my preferred way to fret that because it's often going to an E minor chord. And so my first finger can stay the same. So, I watch for things like that. If you're playing a G chord and it's going to G7 next, doesn't happen to me as often as G to E minor happens, but it's still, it's still something that goes on. And in that case, you may want to use your second, third, and fourth fingers to be able to reach back to that G7 there. So I look for, what's happening from one chord to the next to help determine the fingering. And that's something that is, again, kind of a case-by-case situation. And obviously, whatever works best for your hands is the way that you should do it. For example, I've had some students who, they have a real hard time squeezing all their fingers in to play an A chord like this. So a lot of them will play it like this, using their second, third, and fourth fingers. You could also, use your first finger to bar that if you've got that ability to kind of lift up there. So there's no wrong answers, I don't think. I always look for things that, are ergonomically problematic, or are perhaps going to limit a student in what their ability is to play something. So those are kind of the things that I watch out for with fingering. So those are some of the tips that I wanted to share with you today that kind of came up in my studio this week. As always, do what works best for you. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week. And I'm going to go bind and mail some more books. Take care.